across the subarctic and Arctic, warmer temperatures are melting glaciers and snowcaps at a pace never seen. More than 3,000 kilometers to the south, the threat against the ancient Italian city of Venice grows each year. Higher seas lead to floods like this one in 2019, a tidal surge driven by storm winds put parts of the city under 6 feet of water. In the last 10 years, Venice has flooded 110 times. The city hasn't witnessed such onslaught since the Napoleonic Wars of the early 19th century. Venice's 9th century basilica is a victorious testament to time and travail. But its substructure is no match for the enemy at hand, salt.
La chiesa è una costruzione in laterizio rivestita dentro e fuori da esilissimi spessori di marmo, 3 centimetri circa. L'acqua salata, o meglio i sali apportati dall'acqua, con l'evaporazione cristallizzano, aumentano sempre di più, si concentrano sempre di più nelle murature e nella cristallizzazione aggrediscono i marmi, le pietre, le pavimentazioni e così via.
Chief architect Mario PIANA oversees the painstaking multi-million-dollar yearly repairs to the temple. Progress is slow, the work often dashed overnight, because the basilica sits at the lowest end of Venice on St. Mark's Square.
Il costo della manutenzione e del restauro di questo straordinario complesso non va dimenticato, ad esempio, che ci sono più di 100 tipi di pietre di marmo diversi che sono stati utilizzati nella costruzione e nell'abbellimento, che la chiesa, solo per dare qualche numero, ha circa 700, quasi 750 colonne vere, non le piccole colonnine, che ha 8.500 quasi metri quadri di mosaici. Tutti gli esperti danno come quasi inevitabile un innalzamento ulteriore e sempre più preoccupante dei livelli marini rispetto a quelli terrestri. Le città costiere sono particolarmente esposte a questo problema e dovrebbero guardare a Venezia. Perché Venezia è in una delle condizioni peggiori dal punto di vista della condizione del rapporto tra la terra e il mare.
The damage from flooding isn't just hurting Venice's iconic structures, it's derailing the lives of normal citizens, like shop owner CLAUDIO Vernier.
The biggest problem is that is salt water. So the salt destroys everything, and the salt continues to growing up on the walls until 7 meters, also when the water is not, and the salt destroys everything. In November, we'll reach this level.
The 2019 flood cost Vernier some $60,000 in cleanup and repairs, but he says the money isn't the real issue. It's the uncertainty that's killing him.
It's really dangerous for our mind because every day you can't know how it will be the next. We live here, but we want also to do business. It's a problem because you can't not only measure but make a good programmations of the steps of your work, because it's possible that something will happen and destroy everything you will doing since that moment.
And the flooding threat only worsens. Since October last year, 21 abnormally high tides have surged in. But there's good news. Only one surge actually flooded the city. The rest were blocked by Moses. Venice sits atop a semi-protected lagoon, connected to the Adriatic Sea by 3 narrow channels. When the tides surge, water rushes through the channels, leading to the flooding. But since last year, inflatable barriers have been blocking the surges with remarkable success. The one-of-a-kind system is called Mose, or Moses in English. After more than 3 decades and some $6 billion invested, Moses is finally holding the waters at bay.
We are at the northern entrance of Lido Treporti. It is a gap of 420 meters, 6.5 meters in depth. Here we have 21 caissons, 20 meters each, that can be elevated just injecting the air inside the caisson. They can come up independently one of the other. In case of an extreme flooding, you can keep 3 meters at sea and 1 meter in the lagoon. It's very simple. Just in half an hour, the barrier can come out of the water because these caissons are below the water all the time, waiting to be elevated.
This was Moses' first real run last October. Residents long skeptical of the mega project applauded. Among them was Gianna ZANDA, co-owner of the aptly named Acqua Alta, or High Water, bookstore. Each time her shop floods, she has to stack all her low-placed volumes on tables and higher shelves.
They stopped a lot of times during the last decade because there were no money enough and something went wrong with the construction. So, you know, Venetian people, I think, didn't believe that it could actually work. And we saw it at work for the first time in 2020. So we said, okay, last year it was terrible, now we can face what's happening right now. And it worked. And we were all shocked by that. Because, you know, we waited so long that we were beginning to consider it kind of a myth, a legend, something that doesn't really exist. And so, yeah, at the end I was happy. It worked.
Venice officials are so pleased with Moses, in fact, that they're suggesting coastal cities worldwide consider building their own floating tide barriers. Pierpaolo Campostrini is with Venice's Water Authority.
For instance, in the Lake Pontchartrain in New Orleans, there would have been a system like this. New Orleans would not have suffered from the flooding. So, in many places of the world, with the necessary adaptation, a similar concept can be used.
New Orleans was just pummeled by Hurricane Ida, a Category 4 storm in August. Ida made landfall 16 years to the day after Hurricane Katrina devastated the city. In the interim, New Orleans had upgraded its hundreds of miles of traditional above-water levees and dikes. They held up against Ida's 150-mile-an-hour winds. But Campostrini says a submerged barrier like Moses offers another advantage: less impact during calm weather, on ship movement, normal tidal flows, and on natural ecosystems.
This is much more modern, much more environmental friendly than simply putting a dike, closing the entrance from the sea into the land.
More environmentally friendly, but not perfect. Closing off lagoons, even for a short period of time, can cause the water inside to stagnate, damaging flora and fauna. Moses only deploys during the highest of tides, but scientists like Jane D'Amosto say those surges are key to a lagoon's health.
The ecology of the lagoon and the health of the city of Venice depends on exchanges between the lagoon and the sea. So you can't close Mose an unlimited number of times, because then all the organisms and the chemical processes in the lagoon get blocked.
Life in Venice atop a stagnant, lifeless lagoon would be inviable. So the goal is to save both the city and its host. Authorities and scientists are watching closely to see if Moses can pull it off. But even if it does, this groundbreaking tidal barrier could eventually become useless if climate change isn't mitigated.
Mose last year helped us for 20 times. It's not finished. It's an experimental. We hope it will be a good solution, but we know that is not the solution for always, because the sea level we know is growing up, and the Mose we will work for really high tide. But the problem is that that one is not made to work so many times during the year, and not to work for so many hours during a day. So it's just the beginning of the problem.
To stop seas from rising more, greenhouse gas emissions need to be drastically slashed, and fast. But judging by the number of fossil fuel-burning cruise ships vying for entry here, Mose says humanity is losing ground.
As an environmental scientist, one never considers any issues as separate from each other. So, of course, the cruise ships represent an industry that should be obsolete in consideration of the climate crisis. And Venice is one of the most vulnerable places in the world to climate change issues.
Echoing UN Chief Antonio Guterres, Mose says the longer we wait to act, the more it will cost.
If we do decide to save Venice, huge interventions, much more costly and impacting, are going to be necessary. And there's going to be a time when global citizens will need to decide whether it's appropriate to be spending resources on saving Venice for all its cultural, artistic, architectural heritage and its unique history, or to spend billions saving huge areas of the world where there's much larger populations that are affected by climate change, sea level rise, extreme events. I don't want to be making that decision. I don't think anybody should be making that decision in isolation. It's a collective decision that will need to be made.